U.S. Military Doctrine. The U.S. military doctrine integrates offensive, defensive, and stability operations, centered around two main principles: power projection and full-spectrum dominance. Power projection is the U.S.'s ability to deploy and sustain forces globally. This capability allows the U.S. to influence other nations' decisions, deter potential threats, and demonstrate its readiness to protect its interests. Full-spectrum dominance means controlling all aspects of the battlefield, including land, air, sea, space, cyberspace, and psychological warfare. The current strategic doctrine, based on the 1421 framework, which is outlined in the 2001 Quadrennial Defense Review by Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld, specifies: 1. Defend the U.S. homeland. 4. Deter conflicts in 4 key regions: Central Asia, Asia-Pacific, Europe, and Africa. 2. Have the capability to win 2 nearly simultaneous conflicts in these regions. 1. Achieve decisive victory in one of these conflicts. Russian military doctrine. Russia's military strategy, called active defense, combines lessons from the Soviet era, past conflicts, and different scenarios to protect the country's interests and security. Key parts of Russia's active defense doctrine. 1. Preempt and degrade. The strategy starts with showing off military readiness through exercises, deployments, and tests to influence potential enemies. If needed, it includes limited strikes to show military strength and deter escalation. 2. Prepare for counteroffensive. After initial actions, the focus shifts to preparing for a strong counterattack or moves that push enemies into negotiations. 3. Maintain high readiness. A core aspect is keeping a permanent, highly ready force positioned strategically, supporting elements of Russia's active defense doctrine. International framework. Russia aligns its military actions with international rules and treaties. It relies on support from allies like Belarus and partnerships within groups such as CSTO, CIS, and BRICS. Regional defense goals. One main goal is to prevent neighboring countries from adopting policies that Russia sees as threats, as highlighted by the Ukraine crisis. Methodical approach. Military force is used only after trying all non-military options like political, diplomatic, legal, economic, and informational strategy. Political and ideological warfare. Russia carefully crafts its public narratives about interventions in places like Syria, Ukraine, and Georgia, presenting them as responses to requests for help from local groups like the Ossetians and Abkhazians, or Russian-speaking communities. Chinese military doctrine. Before 1993, Chinese military doctrine centered around the People's War concept, inspired by Mao's thoughts on warfare. This approach integrated ideas from Western and Soviet influences and drew on classical Chinese military strategies from thinkers like Sun Tzu. The People's War envisioned a prolonged, total conflict, emphasizing the sacrifice of human resources to gain time. It outlined 3 phases of war: strategic defense, strategic stalemate, and strategic counteroffensive. Additionally, this doctrine relied on a triadic force comprising regular forces, local forces, and guerrilla forces. However, the collapse of the Soviet Union and the Gulf War prompted Chinese leaders to revise their military doctrine. This new approach diverged significantly from the People's War concept. First, it prioritized quick, decisive battles over long, drawn-out conflict. Second, it focused on leveraging strengths, in contrast to the old doctrine, which assumed China would be the weaker side. Third, it advocated for striking first, rather than responding only after being attacked. Fourth, it introduced the concept of strategic deterrence, particularly with nuclear weapons. Lastly, it emphasized the role of elite troops and the importance of technology and information. Germany military doctrine. Before World War I, Germany followed an offensive military strategy known as the Schlieffen Plan. They also invested heavily in building a fleet of battleships, which alarmed other European nations. During World War II, Germany used a rapid and aggressive operational strategy called Blitzkrieg to invade Poland and France. German military doctrine emphasizes the concept of Auftragstaktik, or mission-type tactic. This approach allows commanders to make decisions on the ground, even if it means bending formal rules to adapt to unexpected challenges. Israel military doctrine. Israel's military strategy is shaped by its small size and lack of strategic depth. To offset these limitations, Israel relies on deterrence, including a presumed nuclear arsenal, and overcomes its quantitative disadvantage by staying qualitatively superior. Israel military doctrine is fundamentally defensive, but takes an offensive operational approach. Israel preempts potential threats to secure swift and decisive victories. Israel stays in a state of high readiness, utilizing advanced early warning systems and strong military intelligence to prevent surprise attacks. India Military Doctrine. India's military strategy is defined by an orthodox offensive doctrine, relying on large army formations to conduct punitive incursions into enemy territory. The strategy aims to impose significant costs on adversaries, often through territorial capture to strengthen post-war negotiating position. The Indian military doctrine prioritizes ground forces with limited coordination among military branches. This ground-focused strategy has historical roots. Positioned between hostile neighbors, Pakistan and China, India has fought 5 significant land wars in the north. Current threats like cross-border terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir and Chinese incursions are also managed by the army and ground forces. Iran military doctrine. The Iranian military is primarily defensive, focusing on 4 key objectives. 1. Regime security, protecting the government from threats and instability. 2. Territorial defense, guarding the nation's borders. 3. Demonstrative deterrence, using shows of force to deter adversaries. 4. Retaliatory deterrence. The core of Iran's strategy is retaliatory deterrence, threatening retaliatory actions like terrorist, missile, or cyber attacks to prevent or quickly end conflicts. Iran's offensive strategies mainly focus on spreading its revolution and increasing its influence abroad. This includes supporting proxy groups like Hezbollah, which use retaliatory deterrence against opponents. France military doctrine. Before World War I, France's military strategy was offensive. After the war, it shifted to a defensive approach, with the Maginot Line being key to deterring Germany. However, since November 2018, France has adopted a more offensive doctrine focusing on digital sovereignty and cybersecurity. In summer 2018, France allocated an extra €1.6 billion and added 1,500 personnel to boost cyber operations, aiming for 4,000 cyber combatants by 2025. North Korea military doctrine. North Korea's military strategy is offensively focused, aimed at reunification by force through surprise, overwhelming firepower, and speed. Influenced by Soviet and Russian tactics and rooted in historical resistance movements, the Korean People's Army, KPA, with 1.17 million active personnel and over 5 million reserves, is the primary tool for this strategy. It includes extensive ground, air, and naval forces, with a significant emphasis on special operations. The majority of KPA forces are strategically positioned near the Demilitarized Zone, DMZ, to facilitate rapid incursions into South Korea. North Korea's arsenal includes a large stockpile of artillery, chemical weapons, and ballistic missiles capable of targeting South Korea, Japan, and beyond. South Korea military doctrine. South Korea's military doctrine centers on an offensive strategy encapsulated in PSU, punish immediately, strongly, and until the end, if provoked by North Korea. To maintain stability on the Korean peninsula, the country has adopted a 3-axis system. 1. The kill chain for preemptive strikes on North Korea's nuclear and missile facility. 2. The Korea Air and Missile Defense (AMD) system. 3. The Korea Massive Punishment and Retaliation (KMPR) plan, which includes precision missile strikes or special forces operations to neutralize North Korean leadership.